I was trying to place 911. I don't remember what I was placing.
Emergency, do you require police, fire, ambulance?
I was panicking. We have a baby here vomiting and having tummy.
And so the whole process of advanced cardiac life support resuscitation begins.
I couldn't believe it.
A friend of hers who's in life-threatening condition looked like she wasn't going to make it.
It was plain that these two little girls had been exposed to a deadly poison.
Welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Tonight, we bring you the story of a mother arriving to pick up her child from a sleepover, only to find something terribly wrong. In the height of COVID, she races to get help. What happens next was far worse than she could have ever imagined. Here now is Catherine McDonald with He's So Evil.
That evening, I had a plan of going out with my friends. So I was like, okay, I'll talk to Zahra. In fact, Zahra was not supposed to babysit my baby on that day. Zahra was like, yeah, it's okay, Maurine, you can bring Bernice here because they always stay together, Bernice and Zahra. When I came back late, I was not able to go pick up my baby, so I decided to leave her to sleep there because I know Zahra and she always bring her baby here. So I was like, she can sleep over. In the morning, I texted her like, hi guys, are you guys awake? She was like, yes, Maurine, we're awake. Then I was like, okay, I'm coming to pick up Bernice. She called me back. She was like, Maurine, I don't know what's going on with Bernice because she's kind of behaving weird. Then I was like, what do you mean? She's kind of vomiting. Then I was like, okay, I'm coming to see. Because for me, I thought maybe she overate.
Maurine's friend Zahra had just given their daughters Bernice and Zahra breakfast.
By the time I entered Zahra's house, I found Bernice was laying in a couch. When I look at my baby, I just knew there is something wrong with my baby. Then I was like, Zahra, you can see Bernice is dying. She was like, Maurine, what are you talking about? I was like, look. I could tell as a mom. In fact, I remember I squeezed her finger. When I squeezed her finger, it was like no blood. She turned the color already. Then I said, we have to call 911. She was like, Maurine, don't panic, don't call 911, wait. I was like, Zahra, my baby is dying.
Bernice was clearly in distress.
I was trying to place 911. I don't remember what I was placing. Then she grabbed a phone from me because she saw me, I was panicking. They asked her, what is your emergency? We have a baby here. I just give the baby cereal and the baby was vomiting and kind of having tummy.
Emergency, do you require police, fire, ambulance?
It's March 7th, 2021. The province of Ontario is still in the height of COVID lockdowns, and 911 operators are swamped, redirecting many calls to telehealth, a call-in service that helps with symptom assessment.
When you called 911, because it was COVID, they didn't think it was maybe that urgent.
She transferred her call to another doctor or a nurse, I don't remember. So for me, in my mind, I was like, okay, let me grab Bernice while Zahra is talking on the phone. So I came to my apartment. That day, my friend Zahra was here. She was like, Maurine, what's going on? I was like, I don't know what's going on, but we have to change Bernice. I'm like, check the elevator, check the window to see if the paramedic are here. I didn't see anyone. So I had to run back to go to Zahra's apartment. She was talking to either was a doctor, I don't know. They were like, okay, you can go to any nearest hospital because it seems it's not emergency. I was like, oh my God.
Fighting her rising anxiety, Maurine bundled up Bernice, and the women headed to Michael Garron Hospital, 20 minutes away.
We went to emergency. Then I was like, can you please help? Because you know you have to wait. When you reach there, it's emergency, but you have to wait. Okay, what's wrong with the baby? I was like, my baby, he can't even talk. She can't even talk. Because I remember I tried to talk to like, Bernice, can you say something? She was just like holding her tummy.
3-year-old Bernice was going into cardiac arrest.
They were like, okay, we're gonna put you to a different room and we do our job. So they put me somewhere where I can't see my baby.
With no idea what was going on, it was an agonizing wait.
And so the whole process of advanced cardiac life support resuscitation begins. She's intubated, they're doing chest compressions, and they took blood specimens to measure the level of oxygen in her blood. The emergency department staff got in touch with sick kids. Sick kids sent out a transport team to take Bernice back to sick kids for care.
As all of this is happening, Maurine sees Zahra and her friend bringing Samara in.
I was walking from where they put me. I saw Zahra and Frank was the one holding Samara. They were like, wow, Samara is she's also sick.
Minutes later, when the sick kids' transport arrived, Bernice had died.
They told me Bernice is gone. So I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it because she was a healthy girl, you know. I couldn't even think anything can happen to her. I couldn't even think about that because I never take her to any hospital when she's sick or emergency. No, that was the first time and that was the last time.
What are you thinking when they tell you this, that your child has passed away?
Oh my God, I felt like I want to go, like I want to just fall her. I just wanted to fall my baby. I said, Bernice, you can't leave me. That's what I said. I thought of if I had anything which can harm me by that time, or if I didn't have anyone beside me by that time, I was going to die. I was going to die.
And then, horrifyingly, out in the waiting room, Bernice's friend, Samara, began to exhibit the very same symptoms that Bernice had had. And so the sick kids transport team, when they arrived, the emergency team explained that Samara was there with the same problems. Could they take Samara? And thankfully they did. Off they went right away to sick kids.
Welcome back to Crime Beat. Maurine Mirembe has just learned her 3-year-old daughter, Bernice, is dead of a cardiac arrest. And she has no idea how it could have happened. All she knows is that she left Bernice with a friend while she went out the night before. When she arrived to pick her up, she was in medical distress. And now that friend and her daughter are exhibiting the same symptoms. Here now is Catherine McDonald with He's So Evil.
It was Sunday, March the 7th, in 2021. Dr. Whiten. We received a phone call just after 4 p.m. It was a coroner calling to tell us that he was at Michael Garron Hospital with a young girl, 3 years old, who had passed away.
Sick Kids Hospital.
A friend of hers who they were with had been since transported down to Sick Kids Hospital. She was in life-threatening condition and looked like she wasn't going to make it at that time. Her mother had collapsed as well and was taken to St. Mike's Hospital. We were told at that time very little information. We had names and we knew that they lived in an apartment building in South Scarborough.
And fires on scene, they're testing the air, right? That's the main thing, get the air tested.
We had officers attend the scene with Toronto Fire to make sure there was nothing wrong with the ventilation system going through the building, making sure there's no other victims in apartments.
As the detectives headed for the hospital, Dr. Richard Wells learned more about Bernice's condition before she died.
During the course of the cardiac arrest, they sent off a number of blood tests. And one of those blood tests returned a very unexpected result. And that was, she had a terrifically high methemoglobin level.
Hemoglobin is the main protein in red blood cells.
It's perfectly suited to pick up oxygen in our lungs, brings it to the muscles, the brain where oxygen's needed, and drops it off. Fantastic, like a delivery truck. Under certain circumstances, normal hemoglobin can be transformed into methemoglobin as a result of exposure to certain toxins. It makes one tiny, tiny change. The atom of iron loses one single electron, and that is sufficient to change the function of hemoglobin. Methemoglobin is still really good at picking up oxygen in the lungs, but when it gets to the brain or the muscle where oxygen is low, it does not deliver it. It circulates back to the lungs, around and around and around, never delivering the cargo. So someone who's got a very high level of methemoglobin will suffocate, even though they've got plenty of air, plenty of oxygen, heart's perfect, lungs are perfect, they just can't get oxygen to the tissues. Bernice's blood test showed that 80% of her hemoglobin had been converted to methemoglobin. To put that into context, in general, once the methemoglobin level gets to 70%, that's fatal.
If caught early enough, the condition can be reversed.
We administer a molecule called methylene blue, a bright blue dye. Methylene blue reconverts the iron in methemoglobin, so it gives back an electron. That was done for Bernice during the course of her cardiac arrest treatment, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. When Samara got to sick kids, they gave her methylene blue, and that's how they saved her.
Eventually, Zahra is released from hospital. She did full recovery. She went and spent time with Samara. Samara was kept in the hospital for several days afterwards till she became a full recovery.
It was devastating for all involved. Maurine and Zahra were both from Africa and had met in 2018.
They met in the shelter system in Toronto. They were both pregnant at the time. Shortly after, they both had babies. They had no other family in Canada, so they bonded with each other. So on the 6th, when Maurine went out, it wasn't uncommon for her to call up Zahra and say, "Can you watch Bernie?" as she called her.
She was nice. She was nice, she was kind, she was someone, you can tell, okay, she's also mom. We used to do things together. We used to go outside together. We used to eat together. We used to do a lot of things in shelter together. We became like a family. I gave birth to Bernice, it was Feb, and she gave birth to her daughter, it was March. So the difference, it was about 1 month. I stayed in the shelter about a year. Zahra, she got a house before me, so she moved here. And then she's the one who spoke to the management. She was like, "Could you please see if you can get for her apartment as well?" She was kind of my sister because she was the first number one I could run to, in case if I need something, I'll go ask her, and if she needs something, she would ask me.
On February 28, 2021, 1 week before Bernice died, they celebrated her 3rd birthday together with friends.
I planned for her because I never do birthday for her. And then when she turned 3, I was like, okay, I have to do something special for her. I'm gonna have photos, I'm gonna have cooked food for her. I'm gonna invite my friends, her friends. Hannah and her daughter was here, and Zahra with her daughter was here, and even Frank. Bernice and Zahra's daughter and Hannah's daughter, they used to call him Uncle Frank because he was so nice to them.
As Maurine grappled with her grief and Zahra watched Samara recovering, Richard Wells became fearful.
It was plain that these two little girls had been exposed to a deadly poison. What I was afraid of was that other people, other children, would also be at risk of exposure to the same protein and might meet the same fate. And so I felt we had a duty to figure out as quickly as we possibly could if that poison was something that was just in Samara's apartment or something outside. The first thing I did was to call poison control because I wanted to know if there had been other cases of methemoglobinemia reported in the last few days. Nothing. Nothing at all.
Shortly after 10 p.m. that night, we got a call from the coroner saying that he was pretty certain that it was a toxic ingestion of some kind.
It looks like we're leaning towards something they may have consumed.
The list of poisons that can cause methemoglobinemia, it's not tiny, maybe there are 15 or 20 things, but it's not an extensive list. There's a short list of prescription medicines. Then there are over-the-counter medicines, especially topical anesthetics. There's an assortment of organic chemicals, some of which are found in cleaning products that can do it. And the final category is nitrites and nitrates. The detectives from 41 Division searched the apartment that night.
We're acting under the authority of the coroner's warrant. There's nothing to indicate any criminality. We're just doing our bit to help out with what chemicals got in contact with this young child that caused her death.
They didn't find anything. And so I thought if I went there myself, I might be able to notice something that the detectives hadn't, because I knew kind of exactly what might be there. I looked everywhere, in every drawer, underneath every piece of furniture, under the bedding, under the carpet, in the bathroom, in the cabinets, behind the toilet, everywhere. And I found nothing. There was no prescription medication. There's no supply of any topical anesthetic product. I couldn't see any cleaning products that were accessible to 2- and 3-year-olds that might have done this. And there were no nitrates or nitrites, which might be present in someone's house if they were in the habit of preserving foods. Nothing. I found nothing. The next morning, I brought with me 2 other regional coroners because I thought if I was missing something, maybe they'd pick it up. And we did the whole search again. And again, nothing. Meanwhile, the detectives had discovered that only a few days earlier, there'd been a pest control company in to spray for bed bugs. So that was a red flag. We thought, pest control, poison, that could be it.
So we contacted the company. They were more than willing to help us out. We did a site visit with them, looking to see where exactly was sprayed in the apartment. At that point, we're thinking maybe one of the girls' toys had been sprayed.
They got the safety data sheets from not only what the company had used to spray the apartments, but also all the other chemicals that that particular unit had used that day, in case there was a mix-up. Nothing. So we're striking out.
Welcome back. After an exhaustive search of Zahra's apartment, investigators still hadn't identified the poison that took Bernice's life and made Zahra and Samara so sick, nor how they came to ingest it. Making matters worse, they had no idea if others were at risk. We now return to Catherine McDonald with He's So Evil.
I reached out to whomever I thought might be able to help us. I spoke to the toxicologist at Sick Kids. He put me in touch with the facility at CAMH that was very good at testing for medications in blood samples. Poison control suggested that it might be a good idea for me to get in touch with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And it gave me the awful thought that maybe this had all happened because of some bad batch of a food product. If that were the case, then the clock was really ticking, because who knows who might also be exposed to the same food product.
Shortly after the death, we had a meeting with all the stakeholders. The coroner's office, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, the Canadian Mental Health Association, members from our Centre of Forensic Science. We had our Child and Youth Advocacy Centre, we had members from Homicide. I'm going to estimate 40 people on a call. Talking through the different aspects of what caused the death, how are we going to figure out what it was. We knew in the last 24 hours what the girls had eaten. They'd eaten a chicken dinner from a local chicken restaurant. They had had cereal, powdered milk, and tap water. So what we're looking at was very narrowed down.
The onset of methemoglobinemia after exposure to a toxin is pretty fast. And it wasn't really plausible that the exposure had happened the day before. This is something that is absorbed rapidly, acts rapidly, and does its bad business. And so we focused on their breakfast. Samara's mother told us they had a cereal called Golden Morn, a type of cereal that's particularly popular in Africa. And it's made of maize. You mix the maize up with water, sometimes you add some milk, warm it up, and it's ready to go. It's something that's particularly given to children. It's not food that the grown-ups eat. I looked into Golden Morn a little bit. It's made by a big food conglomerate. Michelle from CFIA looked into this, and she discovered that this company did not officially import this cereal to Canada.
Feeling that something wasn't right, investigators went back to both apartments, looking for the cereal.
We seized an unopened bag of Golden Morn from Samara's apartment, found another unopened bag in Bernice's apartment, seized those, and brought them back. What we didn't find was an already opened bag of Golden Morn, so we couldn't find the bag from which this particular breakfast had been made.
The cereal comes in, the best can be described as a chip bag. So once the bag has been opened, you can't reseal it again.
When we spoke again to Samara's mom, she said, oh, well, of course there's not an open bag there. Everyone knows once you open a bag of Golden Morn, you've got to put it in a sealed container. The bag doesn't reseal, it gets stale and it's no good. So we went back again and looked in the cupboard, and we found a tin that was labeled on the top Golden Morn, and that was where the cereal had come from. So we had it.
On Monday, March the 8th, 2021, I received a call from Dr. Wells. Hello, bonjour. He was concerned that contaminated cereal could be in the marketplace. What's the product's name? And I knew we needed to act quickly. We assembled a food safety team and we started working. We did follow up with the manufacturer and confirmed that there haven't been any complaints in Canada or in the country that it was manufactured. With Dr. Wells and the police detectives' assistance, we knew that the product was purchased from a particular store because they were able to obtain a receipt, and that's how we were able to trace it back to the retailer and then to the distributor.
So the Food Inspection Agency went to this outlet, seized a lot of specimens of Golden Morn cereal, recorded the batch numbers.
We were able to take 4 additional samples and we submitted those to the lab for testing. The investigation was expanded to include 3 additional samples, the powdered milk, the homo milk, as well as the leftovers of a chicken dinner.
At the same time, the Centre of Forensic Sciences began examining the food samples as well.
I did a visual examination of the cereal samples, and in one of the samples there were these tiny, colorless, roundish particles that really shouldn't have been there, and they were not observed in any of the other samples. And these particles were later identified as sodium nitrite. Sodium nitrite could be a very fine powder, or it could be particles of various sizes and shapes. The particles that were identified in the cereal flakes, they were very small. They were hard to see with the unaided eye. They were approximately less than 1 millimeter in size. It's about the size of a ballpoint pen. And there were hundreds of these particles in that sample that I examined. It was unusual because a substance such as sodium nitrite, which is toxic, should not be in a cereal.
The sodium nitrite is regulated by Health Canada. It's best described to me as being a super salt. It's used for curing meats and in baking products. When you buy your meat in the store, it's what keeps it that pink-red color.
Further analysis by our lab confirmed that sodium nitrite was found in the cereal being stored in the Similac container. Sodium nitrite is not a permitted food additive in cereals. It can be used in other food products such as cured meats, up to a maximum allowable limit of 200 parts per million. In this case, the cereal being stored in the Similac container was 8,400 micrograms per gram, which was 100 times higher than what was allowed in meat products.
It's a terrifically high, unheard of level. First of all, eureka. We found the poison. This is what had killed Bernice. This is what had made Samara so sick. My second reaction was, I can't think of any way that that amount of poison could have been in that cereal for any innocent explanation. Now it was time to consider that this was a homicide.
It was weeks before investigators arrived at the possibility that Bernice's death was not accidental. But because of her age, homicide detectives had been looped in from the start.
I was surprised every step of the way. The investigators were still trying to figure out what had happened here, whether this was some sort of horrible accident or whether or not this was something where we thought somebody was culpable and that this was a criminal event. It just wasn't definitive yet at that point.
Even though sodium nitrite had been found in the children's cereal and was thought to have been put there on purpose, it still wasn't clear whether this was a homicide case or not.
We needed to know if this was something that was accidental tampering or some sort of issue with how the food was produced and whether or not this had occurred anywhere else within Canada, within the city, or globally. And what we discovered was that it wasn't.
At around this time, I had with the CFIA scientist a crucial interview with Samara's mum. And in the course of this interview, we discovered the critical clue. That was that Samara had had cereal from that canister the Thursday morning previous with no trouble at all. Prepared in the same way, served with the same milk, did not get sick. So we knew something had happened between Thursday morning and Sunday morning.
So we started looking at who has access to the apartment again. The only good thing that came out of COVID was our scene was contained because of the lockdown. Access to the apartment was very restricted, the amount of people in and out. It wasn't as if there was other children coming in and out of the apartment for play dates, other parents coming in and out of the apartment.
Apart from Maurine, Zahra, and the pest control company employees who had been ruled out, only one other person had been there.
Talking to Maurine, we discovered that Zahra's friend, Frank, was at the apartment when she dropped off Bernice. She didn't think much of it. She had seen Frank before. She knew Zahra and Frank were friends.
I remember Frank. Frank was sitting eating peanut while Zahra was preparing something to eat. In fact, this guy was the one who told these kids, "Oh, you guys, Samara, go play. Go take your friend and go play in your room."
What did you know about Frank?
Frank was a nice man because I remember one day this guy babysitted my baby, Zahra's baby, and Hannah's baby. For sure, he was like a good father because he was kind. He could play with kids.
In speaking to Zahra, we asked her about who Frank was. She just told us that Frank was just a friend of hers who lived in the area. He'd stop by sometimes to check on her, and they were just friends. We found out later that Frank had left for work at around 5 a.m. the morning of the 7th. And around 7 a.m., the girls got up and they'd had their breakfast.
They started looking into Francis Ngugi, or Frank, as he was known.
We learned that Francis works at Griffith Foods. Griffith Foods is an industrial plant. They make different sauces, they make different seasonings.
The detectives discovered that Francis worked as a custodian. When they visited the food processing plant, they found that there was a huge amount, sacks of sodium nitrite in plain view, to which Francis would have had access. So suspicion fell quickly and heavily on Francis.
We went and met with the management at Griffith Foods, who were fantastic. They were more than helpful. We got a tour of the plant, and we seized a sample of the sodium nitrite. They get it in 25 kilo bags, and it was under lock and key. It's a big cage in the middle of the plant, and it was regulated.
Sorry, I'm just going to close the door for privacy. Okay? If there are any issues, please let us know.
We bring Zahra back into the station for another follow-up interview. At this time, admits yes, Frank stayed over the night and left in the morning. We found out that they were just two friends that met previously at an adult learning center, and they became friends at that point. In September of 2020, they began an intimate relationship. During this time, Frank would come to the apartment quite often. He knew Samara, her daughter. He professed his love to her. He asked her to marry him. She said no. The relationship ended.
So with that, the original team involved in the case were able to formulate some grounds and lay some charges, and he was arrested on June 19th.
He was charged with criminal negligence causing death and administered a noxious substance. We executed a search warrant at his apartment. We seized several items, laptop, cell phone. All the electronics that we seized during the search warrant are sent off to our tech crimes. Okay, friends. Yes. Okay. I'm Detective Whiten. Okay, I'm a partner Detective Mike Petrakis. When Frank's arrested on the 19th, my partner and I, we interview him at the station. We talk to him, we present the information that we have. We tell him this is his time to tell us anything he wants, his side of the story. He tells us he doesn't know anything about Bernice, doesn't know Maurine. He says he knows Zahra. And we asked him about his job at Griffith Foods. We asked about nitrite. And I clearly remember him saying to us, nitrite, what's that? After that, we have a meeting with the Crown Attorneys, Maureen Pecknell, and homicide joins us at that time.
Bail review was set for December of 2021. It was determined that Mr. Ngugi could not be released, and he remained in custody. There was a preliminary hearing that was scheduled.
Months after a toddler died suddenly, Toronto police believe the 3-year-old ate poisoned cereal.
There was some media surrounding that because of Bernice's tragic death.
On June 19th, police arrested 45-year-old.
A gentleman who worked at Griffith Foods came forward to police and essentially broke open the case.
He was charged with 2 counts of administering a noxious substance.
He said when he saw the news that Mr. Ngugi had been charged in the poisoning of these 2 little girls, he felt sick to his stomach. And the reason was because he thought back to something that had occurred in late February.
He was working at the food plant, noticed that there were 2 damaged bags of sodium nitrite, and wanted to obviously have that properly cleaned up, knowing full well how volatile it was.
Because there's such safety concerns around this product in its pure form, Francis was told that a teaspoon of this would kill him, and be very careful, don't let it touch his skin and not to ingest or inhale it while he was cleaned. They had the proper protocols in place for him to clean it. I believe it's this time that Francis stole a small sample of the sodium nitrite. The amount we're talking about would be equivalent to a sugar pack size. It eventually made its way back home, and on the 6th or the 7th, sometime throughout the night, I believe that he put it into the cereal.
So that was a key piece of evidence. And when I read that, that was really, I think, the turning point for me in terms of now having a direct connection between Mr. Ngugi and an intentional poisoning. and because a death resulted from the intentional poisoning, I felt that the law would support a charge of first-degree murder.
What they couldn't understand is why he'd do it.
So Mr. Ngugi had been in a relationship with Zahra Issa on and off for a number of months. She was married to someone who was still living in Tanzania with her older daughter, and they were trying to find a way for the two of them to come to Canada. I think Zahra was probably torn about what to do. But in the end, she broke it off with Mr. Ngugi. They continued to be in contact with each other, to be on a friendly basis, and he would still come over to her house. So they were on good terms, at least that's what it looked like. And so motive was very weak. We couldn't figure out why would Mr. Ngugi target the children or even target Zahra. It wasn't much later that our speculations about motive actually gained some traction. The police had obtained a search warrant for Mr. Ngugi's home, and they seized a number of devices, including an Android phone, an iPhone, and a laptop as well. And they sent these items off to Tech Crimes to try and ascertain what was on them. It wasn't until many months later that they were able to get inside the devices and find out what was in them. That was really what solidified our motive.
Welcome back. Francis Ngugi has been charged in the death of 3-year-old Bernice Wamala. As prosecutors build their case, they say they have the motive. Will he now admit to what he's done or take his chance with the jury? Here again is Catherine McDonald with the conclusion of He's So Evil.
A preliminary hearing date had been set when the Tech Crimes Unit delivered their findings from the phones and laptops seized at Frank's home.
Mr. Ngugi had tracked down Zahra's husband in Tanzania, had been stalking him on the internet, trying to convince Zahra's husband to let her go.
He had accessed Zahra's personal information and taken photographs of her husband's citizenship card, Samara's birth certificate, other citizenship documents. He'd had all that on his phone. As well, they discover audio recordings. He's bugged her apartment with listening devices, and she has no idea.
There was also some other very disturbing items, including an article on sodium nitrite and what it could do. It still wasn't exactly clear whether he was trying to harm Zahra or her child. Either way, there was a solid motive there. And of course, poor Bernice, all children are completely innocent victims, but she was particularly innocent in the sense that she wasn't even related to Zahra's family. She was just Zahra's best friend's young child who was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
The 47-year-old man has pleaded guilty to second-degree murder.
Ngugi read this letter apologizing to Bernice's mother. I can't reverse what I did. I have no excuse for these meanful, shameful, and selfish acts.
Maurine and Zahra were both there, listening, and they both broke down. They were on their knees, overcome by emotion. And so at that point, we put a stop to what he was saying. It was too cruel to go on.
According to the agreed statement of facts, Francis Ngugi had intended for Zahra to eat the cereal and become sick. On November 3rd, 2023, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 17 years.
I'm not going to say okay, you're forgiven because you were in the hospital that day, the day Bernice passed on, and also you knew what you did. It's like you put the poison for this baby and you didn't tell, and you were in the hospital. He's so evil. On that day when we were in the court, he was saying, sorry, Maurine. I was so upset. Why would you say sorry to me? It's like you planned,
Did he look remorseful to you? Did he look like he was sorry?
Catherine, I can't tell. Even if he looks like he's sorry to me, he was supposed to look sorry before. Because these was innocent kids. And he used to pray with them. His affairs with Zahra, it was not about the kids. I don't see sorry in him. He was so evil. I'm sorry to say this.
Are you still friends with Zahra?
I'm not. We're not friends.
Do you blame her?
On the other hand, I blame Zahra because she opened the door for this evil man, Frank. Because if you don't love someone, don't give that person a chance. Push this person away.
As a result of Bernice's death, their relationship became strained. It was not in any way Zahra's fault that any of this happened. And I believe that she was as shocked as anybody else to learn what he had done. She was very close to Maurine, and she regarded Bernice as a second daughter. So I think when Bernice died, Zahra was devastated. And there were probably a lot of complicated emotions surrounding the fact that her own daughter, while she'd become very ill, survived. Zahra had no idea that Mr. Ngugi was stalking her. She trusted this man. And so I think she was as betrayed as anyone. She was a victim here as well.
Deepening all of this tragedy is the fact that Maurine also partially blames herself.
What I'll say for moms outside there, to not trust anyone with your kid. You are the mom, you have more responsibility than anyone. Because even if you take your baby to see a doctor, the doctor will tell you she's okay, but you can tell she's not okay. I keep blaming myself why I didn't talk to 911.
Because you gave the phone to her.
Yes. Maybe they could hear me the way I was panicking. But it was only her who was seeing me panicking. These people, they couldn't hear me. Because if they could hear me, maybe they could be like, this is serious. We need to go be there. But they took it lightly. It was me to speak, not Zahra to speak on behalf of me. So from that time, I learned I don't trust anyone to speak on behalf of me. Even though I don't know how to speak, I'll try to make sure you understand me.
There is one thing she wants Frank to understand.
I want him to feel like the pain that I had, the pain that I'm like until now, like I don't have future anymore. No, Bernice. No. Because Bernice was my happiness. She could make you happy. She could dance. She was a lovely baby. She had that thing in her like being a leader in future. It was inside her. She was so special. I love you. Even if she see you, you're not happy, she used to have this word of, it's okay, mommy, it's okay. When Bernice passed on, I was like, Bernice, who's going to tell me it's okay? Because you used to tell me it's okay, and then I feel like, okay, I have another day. I could stand because of her.
We reached out to Zahra for an interview, but she declined after sharing that these events have affected every part of her life and left her with a great deal of trauma. Maurine continues to suffer the same, along with anxiety and depression. The hardest part, she says, is still living in the same building, something she hopes to change as soon as she can. What sees her through, she says, is caring for her other children. I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat. Want more episodes of Crime Beat? Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, go to the Global TV app, visit globaltv.com, or check out our Crime Beat YouTube page.